you can look up and you'll see NATO is basically the retirement home for neocons.
Yeah.
And they were out there trying to raise $100 billion to keep the war going with Russia if Trump is elected.
The Financial Survival Network. Now more than ever. The Financial Survival Network.
And welcome. You are listening to and watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. The election's over. We're going to have on Martin Armstrong, who had been basically almost a year ago been saying Trump was going to win. The model showed over a 60% chance, record low approval ratings for the current administration. And we wanted to have Martin on because a lot of things are going to flow from this. Wanted to get your opinion, Martin, on what's going to happen next. Again, you'll find his work over at armstrongeconomics.com. Sign up for his daily missives. I never miss them. Martin, great to have you on. So, well, it looks one prediction you made, neither side would believe that the other won, if they won. There's no denying that Trump won this election. There's no allegations of widespread vote tampering, although I'm sure there's plenty because it's as American as apple pie. But they're still finding other reasons. I mean, the left is in complete meltdown mode now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they basically are still kind of denying it. They mainly because I think if you really step back and look at what the left did, they could not believe, criminally charging Trump and all these things. They thought he was unelectable. And, that was their downfall. They just kept this nonsense up. And rather than looking at what the state of the economy and economics really is, I mean, our computer's just never been wrong. And because it doesn't do the polls, it's not asking people, gee, who are you going to vote for next week or whatever. It's just looking at the economics. And even go back to the Great Depression. Herbert Hoover had nothing to do with the Great Crash. He had just been elected. All right. And then in 32, he gets only, 39%. Whoever's there is always blamed. That's pretty much the way it goes. So it's not necessarily that, what they did or one way or the other. But with the other thing, which I'll be reviewing more at the conference, is that this was the 34th year after the fall of the Berlin Wall. That's when the socialism in the West should start to collapse. And that's what we're watching. It will take until probably about 2037 to complete the entire cycle. But look, if you look at China, you look at Russia, Eastern Europe, nobody wants to go back to this sort of stuff. But in the West, you have Stammer over there, in Britain locking up, 12-year-old kids because they criticize the government. I mean, this is nonsense. They think that they can just dictate to people and you're going to jump and just ask how high. But the real downside with this whole thing is that this was a major coup attempt, I would say. That I was told from the beginning of the year that they would not allow somebody else on the ticket with Biden, and that he was not going to be the candidate. He would step down after the Republican convention. And back then, there were two camps vying for power, which was Michelle Obama and Hillary. But the neocons really wanted Camilla because she's just another placeholder. And her VP is the same thing. I mean, come on, and so they just, smile and say whatever they need to say, read the cue cards, and will sign whatever's put in front of them. And that's what the neocons wanted. Now, they are quite upset because, look, these people have. I know some of them. I've had dinner with them. You look them in the eyes, and honestly, you don't even see a warm light. I don't know what it is. They were psychologically damaged in the 50s when we had air raids and we had to hide underneath our desks in school or something,
Yeah.
But I mean, even Robert McNamara, you can look on YouTube. He was the neocon, took us into Vietnam. And he did an apology before he died. He said, we were wrong. We thought Russia was involved and it was just a civil war. That's very nice. Well, 58,000 Americans died because you were wrong.
Yeah.
And they've done the same thing with every war. They've never won a single one yet since World War II. And they've been trying to get us into a war with Russia. Ukraine, I speak to Ukrainians, and I can tell you that there was a coup against Zelensky on May 7th. And then he fired his head of the bodyguards. And his bodyguards are really now Americans. Why? Because Ukrainians would basically kill him. Yeah. The ones I talked to, they said if he was on fire, they wouldn't urinate on him until he was dead. They just see him as a puppet of the West, because there was a peace deal, and then Boris Johnson hopped on the plane, went over there, and no, you're not allowed to sign. So, they see that Ukraine is just it's a proxy, no different than Hezbollah is a proxy for Iran. They just take orders from a central place, and that's what's been going on. Why, Zelensky's supposed to be defending his territory. Well, then why did he invade Ukraine and allow Russia to even take more territory in Ukraine? They did that to try and desperately get Putin to attack anything in NATO so they can call him the aggressor. It's just pathetic. But my concern now with the election is that the neocons are afraid of Trump. I mean, he's basically said that he's going to stop all these wars. That's what people really want. I did speak with RFK, and even he was anti-war, which is why I was kind of arguing the two of them should get together anyhow. But I mean, this is it. So what have the neocons done? You can look up and you'll see NATO is basically the retirement home for neocons.
Yeah.
And they were out there trying to raise $100 billion to keep the war going with Russia if Trump is elected. They couldn't raise all the money. But, here you have them also trying to open up in Asia. What's NATO doing over there? All right. What people have to understand is that this is part of that, one world government agenda that comes from the WEF and everybody else there. They think that the UN can become the peacemaker, solve these wars, and then would be elevated. The IMF already has its digital currency on the boards. I've spoken about that, and to replace the dollar, and the World Bank and NATO is expecting to be the new defense department for the world. It's, I mean, even if you look at the 8 points from Schwab in his 2030 plan, in there is that the United States will lose all its power and the military will be handed to UN. I mean, these people are just crazy. But, when one thing I learned a long time ago, it's not what you think, it's what they think that you have to pay attention to. You might think it's
the hard way.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. I certainly wouldn't even advocate something like that, but that doesn't mean that other people won't.
So they're stuck with him now. He's going to end the war in Ukraine pronto. I mean, that's first on the agenda. And already the Palestinians are saying, "Hey, we want peace. We want peace. Just let us survive." Hamas, they're willing to give all of a sudden the hostages. It's kind of like a repeat of Reagan when he came into. Once he was
when
elected.
Reagan came in, Iran suddenly gave up all the hostages there too. That's a reflection that they understand the difference between Trump versus Biden or Camilla. And this is the way it goes. But people also have to understand that it's not really just the personality that you're voting for. It's a whole entourage behind it. Camilla, you're not voting really for her or her ideas or anything else. It's basically, a vote for her was a vote for Blinken and the rest of them to still control foreign policy, etc.
Yeah.
I've said, people were like kind of shocked, but I mean, Hillary would have made a better president. Not that I agree with her opinions, but that she is not somebody that allows others to walk all over her. She's more authoritarian. Now, if she agreed with them, that same thing would happen. But Camilla's like, oh, okay, fine, no problem. That's the whole issue with her. And as I said, this thing was set up from the beginning. The debate with Biden was unprecedented. You never have a presidential debate before people were even nominated. And one well-seasoned Democrat that I know even said to me after that debate, well, now the rest of the world sees what we've seen for 2 years. I mean, it's a shame, but they stuck him up there. They kept everybody off the ballot, so nobody else could interfere with their agenda. He would step down, and then because they had already raised over $100 million, they just handed it to Camilla. They couldn't hand it to Hillary or Michelle. So, she was all over the media everywhere before the Democratic convention. So, I mean, this whole thing was rigged from the beginning, but their biggest problem was they, with all these criminal charges and nonsense, calling January 6th, an insurrection without weapons,
ridiculous.
It's really absurd. But unfortunately, you have a lot of Democrats that are still all caught up in this. Jamie Raskin in particular, he even sent a letter to Trump. Well, you didn't file this paper, so maybe you're not legitimate.
They're not going to try that, are they?
No, I don't think so. But what I am hearing is that they are planning on a very, very large protest in January, and they want it to be significant enough that he would be forced to call out the National Guard so they can call him a dictator. I mean,
it's just not going to work. It's not going to work. No, people are broken. The left is broken now. Maybe they'll recover in time for inauguration, but right now they're just a big wet mess here, Martin.
These ideas have been tried so many times, and they have failed. Stammer has just taken control of Britain and pushing all this stuff in, and his approval rating has plummeted by more than 50%. People are not interested in this. America was supposed to be the land of opportunity. And here you come here and, they keep saying, oh, the rich, the rich, the rich. Well, people don't even look at it. The definition of the rich, in the Great Depression was $5 million. That was an awful lot of money back then when a Cadillac was $600,
Yeah.
And today, what is the definition of rich? They went to $250,000, but then they made it household income. Yeah. So if you and your wife earn $125 apiece, guess what? You're it.
And you're like lower middle class in New York City if you're making 250, barely middle
And
class.
Stammer, his definition of the rich is anybody that has the savings. I mean, it's just gotten to be so ridiculous
Yeah.
that our computer shows that this was 34 years from the fall of the Berlin Wall. This is where finally socialism, Marxist agenda in the West should start to decline.
It's about time.
It should be collapsed completely by 2037. But just look at people that are Eastern Europe, China, Russia. There's no way they're interested in going back to communism.
No. So what is next in store for the U.S., for the dollar, for gold, especially the stock market, inflation? What can Trump really do? We've got 34 trillion worth of debt. We've got hundreds of trillions more in unfunded mandates. I mean, are we expecting too much here?
Look, I'm arguing, and you can tell your viewers to send letters to Trump. I mean, the way out of this is actually not that difficult. What you do is you issue coupons, and you swap the debt, like I would do to bail out a company. You do a debt to equity swap. Here, you would issue a coupon for a 30-year bond that you're holding. They take that to Merrill Lynch or whatever broker you're using. And then you can buy either securities, shares, or corporate debt. They then take the coupon, and then the Treasury redeems it, end of the debt. Okay. We then also have to prohibit any borrowing in the future, but we can, take 34 trillion and inject it into the private sector where it belongs. Interest rates will come down because it's the government out there competing with you for money, and they are the biggest borrower in the room. So your mortgage rate would go down.
Effect, right? The crowding out effect.
Yeah. And I had worked on all this back in the 90s with Dick Armey and Bill Archer back then. And I was asked if to take Social Security to redesign it, to make it a wealth fund. And I did. I said, okay, fine. This is how we do it. People submit their track records. I said I want a live track record for 10 years. And the Democrats wouldn't vote for it because they said when they got in, they wanted to change the fund managers. I said, I don't care who they voted for. It's you're giving this on the track record. Maybe the guy didn't even vote. I don't care about that. But had we done that, the Dow back then was only 5,500. Had we converted that to a wealth fund, Social Security would be. Most people are paying more in Social Security taxes than they are in income tax. That wouldn't be there. I mean, so there are ways to do this, but you're talking about the bureaucrats all there feeding at the trough. You're paying for their grandchildren to go to college. And look, we can straighten this out if we, really give it a shot. Trump has at least come out and said he wanted to eliminate the income tax, but putting on tariffs in replace. I mean, that would help. But you as I said, when you go down the line, you'll see a lot of people are paying more in Social Security than they are in income tax. So we have to deal with the debt problem. If we can do that, we can really straighten out and really then do make America great again.
So is there the will to do it? Because the banks don't really want us to do that. The banks want to see debt go up and up forever, right? Even though it's eventually going to destroy everything, including them. But this is how they make their money, right?
Well, yes, but that's also starting to come to an end. Because the problem here is to be a primary dealer, you have to sign on and agree to buy so much debt. then you get to resell it. If you can't sell it, you're stuck with it. So it's the banks that would be stuck with it. Our interest expenditures this year about $1 trillion. Just in 5 years, they're going to be over 3 to 5 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
The banks don't have enough capital themselves because they have to guarantee to buy this debt in advance. That's not going to happen. So we're at the point where the banks themselves are not going to be able to handle it.
Okay. So it's in everybody's interest, and we need something innovative here, out of the box thinking, which we haven't had, in our country in quite a while, have we?
Look, I'm a trader, and the problem is most of the academics are all leftist type. In fact, one central bank had told one of the major companies, and it's, look, I can't talk to you. You call Armstrong. And it was very interesting. I got on the phone. Is, look, I'm only calling you because they said, it's just, but I have no respect for academics. This is great because I'm not an academic. And he said, all right, let's talk. I said, I'm a trader. I've seen it live, what happens. I'm not theory.
So this is basically good for everyone, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you got better sources than I do, but Trump understands that we're really coming to the end here. Something major's got to be done.
Yes. Look, one thing about Trump is that he understands debt.
Yeah.
And he understands bankruptcy, etc. All right, fine. People, he's been this. Look, you need somebody with at least experience.
Mm-hmm.
And he's at least been through that, so he knows what it is. And you're just looking at it from a government side. What has been interesting, I've been getting more calls probably from foreign governments about what happens now about Trump. It's very interesting because they too, particularly in Europe, they were so sold on this idea that Camille was going to win. Even, the Economist magazine in London, which is, I think, couldn't possibly walk a straight line. We're endorsing, Camilla. Look, you even had, Dick Cheney endorsing Camilla. That's proof that the neocons were there.
Hey, I knew there are several reasons I knew it was over. The botched assassination attempts could only build support for him. But when I saw the Washington Post refrain from endorsing Camilla and pledge to never endorse another presidential candidate, look, who controls the Washington Post, right? A certain 3-letter agency that begins with C. The Grahams, Dorothy Graham, they were CIA assets. Woodward and Bernstein, I don't know if they're assets or they're just dupes. I'll assume they're genuinely good-hearted, kind-hearted, misguided libs, and they're dupes. But who did Watergate? And whenever that agency leaks, who do they leak to? The Washington Post. And Jeff Bezos, the rumor is, although now it's been wiped from the internet and I can't find it, but that the CIA's venture capital fund was one of the early investors in Amazon and the biggest customer of Amazon Web Services, the most profitable division, or perhaps the only profitable division of Amazon. So they seem to have capitulated ahead because they knew it was coming.
Well, I can tell you that I've known journalists over the years, and a very senior guy, one of the top 3 newspapers in New York, and he explained how it really works. He says the government will call you and say, we have a favor. We want you to spin this story this way or kill it or whatever. He says, if you do not, they come after you personally. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
let's see your taxes, etc. Snowden was giving his information to a journalist in California who suddenly drove himself into a tree and died. All right. So he ended up giving it to The Guardian in London.
A lot of bad drivers in those journalists. They have a lot of one-car accidents, hitting trees and
Yeah. Look,
concrete beams,
even the movie they did on me, The Forecaster, it was funded by German TV. And somebody broke into their offices over there, stole what they thought was the film, but they had a backup.
Why does
that was in Germany. They did it.
Right.
And even if you look at the film, in there's a guy named Oliver Brown who worked for the Bureau of Prisons at the time, or he had done so. And in there, he said the FBI showed up at his house the day before to try and intimidate him not to be in the movie.
Unbelievable. Well,
how did they know when the movie crew was even going to go there, unless they were illegally tapping somebody?
I'm loving it. And I love conspiracy theories because they're not really theories. The term conspiracy theorist was created by that certain three-letter agency to discredit critics of the Warren Commission and the investigation of JFK's assassination. Let's get to something Trump mentioned, which paralleled something that you and I, as I'm putting together our book, my decade-long conversations with the master forecaster, I came across it where you said there shouldn't even be an income tax. And lo and behold, 2-3 weeks ago, Trump says, let's get rid of the income tax. Mm-hmm. You had a column, one of your e-blasts about that very topic. How would that work? Could we just do it on a tariffs and a consumption tax? And is there any possible way, Martin, to get this done? Because the worst days of just about everybody's life out there generally start in April 1st and they end around April 16th when you have to try to put all this stuff together, unless you're like me and I do extensions periodically, but that's the worst time of the year.
Yeah, look, I actually debated Steve Forbes, and back then it was Governor Florio of New Jersey at Princeton University. And Florio was known that, if it moved, tax it, and if it died, take whatever's left, Yeah. So I was taking the middle ground between Steve, he wanted the flat tax, and Florio, which, like I said, tax everything. And I turned to him and I said, you're borrowing from the poor and you don't even have the dignity to pay them interest. What are you talking about? I said, because everybody waits for their refund check. So you've taken their money from the lower echelon, from the poor, and you don't even pay them interest. And he had no way to come back at it.
Because there is none. There is no counter argument.
Look, Dick Armey was for the flat tax. Bill Archer was for the retail sales tax. I was the one shuffling back and forth between the two. I finally gave up. I was sitting in Dick Armey's office and he said, Marty, cycles. I said, yes. And he said, if we don't, I can't agree to the retail sales tax because we won't be able to repeal the 16th Amendment. And when the Democrats get back in, you'll know what will happen. We'll have both. And I said, Dick, you're right. And I just kind of gave up at that point. So we're not going to get the 16th Amendment, repealed. No, because the states are all going to have that. So what we can do is basically just eliminate the income tax because we don't need it. Stop the borrowing. All right. Get rid of the debt, as I said, with the coupon issue. All right. And then when you do that, you then have to take Social Security and turn it into a wealth fund because it's all stuffed in there with the debt. And we don't need taxes. When taxes were only necessary historically because money was gold and silver coin. So the king had to get some back in order to spend it. Yes. Okay. Now it's just paper. All right. There's no reason for us to be borrowing our own paper or to even be, imposing taxes to get some of the paper back. It's not necessary.
So we just print? Do we just print the difference? Is that it?
Yes, it is far less. Over 70% of the national debt at times has been accumulative interest.
Yeah.
I mean, if we had just printed the money we needed, we wouldn't be anywhere close to a $34 trillion deficit, and you wouldn't have the inflation we have. This idea that printing is inflationary versus borrowing is nonsense. That was back during the Bretton Woods days. If you had an E-bond, you went to the bank and you said, can I borrow one? It was illegal. You couldn't borrow against government debt. So after 1971, you want to trade futures, you can buy T-bills, Fannie Mae's, whatever, post them as collateral with the broker. All right. So you can borrow. It's money that pays interest. That's it. Mm-hmm. There's no difference between printing it and borrowing it, other than if you borrow it, you pay interest, whereas you print it, you don't. So it would be less inflationary today to print than to borrow. And let's just look at this realistically. Get rid of the debt, stop the borrowing. We won't have the interest expenditures. And look, over 50% of the interest that we spend goes out of the country.
Mm-hmm. And
China owns 10% of the national debt. So 200 billion of the interest this year goes to China.
And and also you're looking at the banking system becoming unsustainable as a result of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, a primary dealer it gets that license, but it must guarantee to buy a certain amount of the debt. And this level of debt is exceeding the capitalization of the primary dealers. Right. They're not going to be able to keep this system going. And
look at the federal budget, what we're paying out money for, half of it's wasted, right? I mean, I think any normal person could agree. I did a ChatGPT search. Give me the top 100 agencies I could get rid of and nobody would even notice it. And half those names, Martin, I didn't even know they existed. I had no idea they were an entity. And you could replicate the same exact thing on the state level. This is going to require like a revolution, a paradigm shift in thinking, isn't it?
Look, when I lived in New Jersey, every little hamlet had a chief of police and a police force because they used it to raise money. Here in Florida, we have the police forces for the county. Mm-hmm. So, I was driving down the, Park Boulevard. I wasn't paying attention because nobody was on the road. He says, oh, you're doing 50 and a 35. I said, I'm sorry, I wasn't really paying attention. And he took my license. He says, you've never had a ticket. I said, no. Well, here, I don't want to be the first one to give you one. I mean, that would never take place in New Jersey. New Jersey, they would have called out the SWAT team, figured it had to be a fake name. I mean, Jersey, they would give you a parking ticket in a private parking lot if you were slightly over the line. Yeah. It was just ridiculous. They use it to raise money. And that's the big difference I see, from Florida versus New Jersey. I mean, New Jersey was horrible.
Well, no income tax in Florida, so automatically the budget is less than half of the budget of New York State, with 3 or 4 million more people, which is a pretty mean feat.
Yeah, look, you have a lot of retired people down here, so that's good because they keep that check against government. They can't raise the taxes on them too much. And look, this is why, Florida is the number one state everybody's moving to. Yeah. California is the number one state people are leaving.
Funny. And the weather in California is actually better than the weather in Florida. The beaches are better in Florida for sure, but the actual year-round weather, dryness, all that, it's better generally in California. So don't tell me it's the weather why people come here instead of California.
Well, people are leaving there. So what does Newsom do? Oh, let's put an exit tax to punish them for leaving.
Like New Jersey. New Jersey's had one for
Yeah.
years. It's got to be unconstitutional. No one's ever challenged it. Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. Will things really change, or will they just go on the way they did kind of Trump's first term? I think he knows who all the players are. The other thing is he's going to hit the ground running. All those executive orders for immigration and everything else he plans to do, he's going to walk into the White House with them. It's not like he's going to have to try to figure out, well, what should I do first? Who should I appoint to this? Who should I appoint to that? It might be the best thing that ever happened for the country that the suspicious way in which the 2020 election, took place and proclaimed the winner, making him have 2 unconsecutive terms might make him way more effective than if he had just continued on a second term.
Yes. Well, also, I can tell you because, I used to be part of the vetting process for picking presidents. They would send me in, I would meet them. Okay. And I know because I've been there. You take Bush Jr., he did not pick Dick Cheney.
Yeah.
That is, the deep state that picked the cabinet. They did the same thing to Trump. They said, oh, you're not a politician. We have to give confidence to the world, and we need people with experience in here.
Yeah.
They put in John Bolton,
Oh,
even
good
Trump
move.
said, fired him. He says he wanted to start World War III because they shot down an unmanned drone
Drone
that
in
cost
Iran.
$2,000.
Drones are $100 a piece now, less than $100. So that's really worth going to war for.
Yeah, I mean, it's look, I've known these people. I knew Bill Kristol, he even spoke at our conferences. His father started the whole neocon movement. And, his stick was he wanted to remove Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi, and Assad out of Syria and get rid of these dictators, and we'll bring democracy to the Middle East and create peace. So said, you're out of your mind.
Pipe dream.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the same thing with Russia. It's regime change all the time that they're interested in, and sticking in their puppets to run something.
Well, they got their regime changed this time, Martin. Hey, going to see you tomorrow, Friday on November 8th at your conference in Orlando. Hey, I'll have the link in the show notes. Sign up for the conference if you haven't done it already. If any of you out there are going to be there, send me an email, kerrylutz@kerrylutz.com. I'll buy you a drink. Martin, we'll see you tomorrow. Be well.
Well, thanks a lot. It's always good to see you. Take care of yourself there.